Man, there's nothing like that feeling of going to a show, Adrenaline's pumping, you're surrounded by hundreds, thousands of fans of the same band or artist that you like. Maybe it's a beautiful day and it's an outdoor venue. Maybe it's kind of a cool, intimate setting in theater. Maybe it's a huge stadium full of people seeing some revered artist. It doesn't really matter. Each concert experience is kind of its own thing. We all love them, all of us music fans. Well, maybe not all of us, but most music fans enjoy a good show here and there, and I am certainly no exception. So here, I would like to share with you guys my top 10 favorite bands and artists that I've seen live. So this is an interesting idea that I had for a while now for a video, and I've been very fortunate to see a lot of bands over the years. Probably the last, let's see, the first show I would have seen would have been like 2007 or 8. So 14 years or so I've been going to concerts. I'm sure that's not, as long as some people who've been seeing shows since the 60s and 70s have done it. But for me, it's starting to feel like a long time. I've been very fortunate to see a lot of great bands and great artists over the years. A lot of legacy artists, actually, who are still going despite it all, despite time and everything. So anyway, that being said, here are my top 10 bands and artists that I've seen live. So for my number 10, I'm choosing the very first concert I've ever seen, and it's Zappa Plays Zappa, which is Dweezil Zappa playing his father Frank's music with a band and with various band members who've been in and out of Frank Zappa's band over the years. And I was fortunate enough to actually see them on their very first tour in 2006. So I saw them play at Madison Square Garden with my brother-in-law and a friend, and it was awesome. They had quite a few different guest musicians there. They had Napoleon Murphy Brock, who was on a bunch of Zappa albums. He sang pretty much the whole night. They had Terry Bozzio, drummer for Frank Zappa. He came out probably about a third of the way through the show. And then Steve Vai, of course, who needs no introduction, showed up on guitar and played a totally blistering version of Zombie Wolf, which was just amazing. And yeah, I gotta say, Dweezil has done his dad proud. I think Frank would be very pleased with the Zappa Play Zappa touring band. I also was lucky enough to see them a second time. My friend Matt, shout out to you, Matt, who I've gone to a ton of concerts with, gifted me in 2015 a concert ticket for my birthday, and we saw Zappa Play Zappa again at the Beacon Theater in New York, and they played all of one of my favorite Zappa albums, One Size Fits All, in its entirety, which was really, really cool to see. So I've been lucky to see this band twice. I was very lucky to see them on their opening tour at the Garden, and they just did a phenomenal job, and I think Dweezil Zappa is doing more for Frank's legacy than perhaps anybody else in the family, but I won't get into the political side of that. But yeah, Zappa Plays Zappa, great show. Great shows, I should say. Number 9 is an interesting one, a little less so for the show itself and more for the experience. Although the show itself was great, was Steve Vai. I actually had a chance to go see Steve Vai in 2012. It was these tickets were gifted from my brother-in-law's parents to myself, my sister, and my brother-in-law, and we saw Steve Vai play at a little theater in Morristown, New Jersey. Now, you may be thinking like, this is an interesting pick. Well, again, for me, it was the whole experience. So, first of all, when we were waiting in line to go into the show, a lady came up to us and she said, hey, I've got a backstage pass here. She's like, the person that I was going to go with decided to, like, last minute they couldn't go or whatever, so they just gave it to us, and we're looking at each other like, whoa, like my sister and my brother-in-law and I were just going, wow, we got a backstage pass, holy crap, So my brother-in-law is a much bigger Steve Vai fan than I am, despite my, being a big Frank Zappa fan. So I handed it to him and I was like, listen, man, this you really love Steve Vai, you're a much bigger fan than me, you go. So he was really happy about that. And then the other thing about the concert was that he had an opening act by the name of Vicky Martinez. She's a singer who was featured on one of those stupid shows called The Voice, which I don't really care about. I'd actually never heard of her before, but she played an acoustic set It was just her and an acoustic guitar, and it was phenomenal. She was really, really good. I guess from what I understand, she was on the same label as Steve Vai, and he heard her and he said, "Wow, I really want to tour with her." She also came out and played a song with him during his set, which, by the way, was amazing. He brought out some awesome guitars. His band was great. He played some amazing solos. Like, say what you want about Steve Vai, he's an amazing musician. I thought he put on a fantastic show. And then after the show, my brother-in-law he basically went backstage to see Steve Vai, and Vicky Martinez was out there in the lobby, and my sister and I talked to her for probably a good 40 minutes or so, and she was very nice. She was cool. She was telling us how she got the gig as his opening act, and it was just a really cool experience. And then we also were talking to that lady who was also a guitar player who was actually friends with Steve Vai. So that was really cool. It was just like a really neat experience to have overall, and I really enjoyed it. So just for the experience itself, I had to put that Steve Vai concert on this list. Awesome stuff. Number 8 is sort of like not a dual headliner, I guess. One of these bands opened up for the main act, but they're both like kind of classic prog bands that I really love. And it was when Procol Harum opened for Jethro Tull, and it's the first time I saw Jethro Tull in 2010. This was when Martin Barre was still in the band, so it was the lineup with him, Dawn Perry, I want to say John O'Hara, I think, is also in the band, and I think maybe David Goodyear. I think that was the lineup. So it was the very last lineup of Jethro Tull before Ian Anderson split up the band for a while, and basically I think it was probably the last tour or so with Martin Barre. So I was very lucky to see Jethro Tull with that lineup, and then I was also very lucky to see Procol Harum, who hadn't toured the States in, from what I understand, quite a long time, and happened to open up for them on this show. And sadly, Gary Brooker has passed away as of earlier this year, so I feel very fortunate to have seen them. And honestly, both bands were really great. My brother-in-law went with me. He kind of came with me last minute because my buddy Matt ended up not being able to go to the show. And we always joke about the fact that there was a guy who was like apparently showed up for Procol Harum who kept yelling, "Salty dog!" It was really funny. But that was great. Tull blew me away. We were 5 rows back, so I mean, the experience was really amazing. I've often said that basically I was close enough to see the spit coming out of the end of Ian Anderson's flute. He was as charismatic on stage and as he's always been. His voice wasn't amazing. Like, obviously, it's no secret that Ian's voice has been deteriorating for the last couple decades or so, but he still held his own that night. I thought he sounded really good, and Martin Barre was just amazing. I was very fortunate to actually see him solo earlier this year, and he did an amazing job there as well. But being 5 rows back to see Tull was excellent. 5 rows center. I mean, I was so close. It was awesome. The only complaint I have at all about that show was at the very end, they closed with Locomotive Breath, and everybody kind of went up to the stage, and some idiot was facing away from the stage at me, like going, "Ooh!" like screaming at me, all drunken and everything, and it ruined that moment for me a little bit. So whoever you are, you're lucky I didn't punch you in the face that night, because I was pissed. Overall, though, great show. I love Tull, as you all know, and Procol Harum was also really great. So aside from that one complaint, I thought it was a great time. Number 7, this was the most recent show I've actually seen, and for those who know me, you might be surprised to see it this low, but I was very, very fortunate to finally see Roger Waters this year at Madison Square Garden on the This Is Not a Drill tour, which I saw him at the very end of August this year with my buddy Matt, who got the tickets, and a bunch of his friends. We all went together, and it was a really good show. I thought the production was amazing. The musicianship was amazing. Roger Waters has become legendary with his live performances. I think they've been amazing this year. I have to say, without going too much into detail, I found the politics fatiguing after a while. That's probably why, for me, the show is not in the higher echelon of this list because I felt, especially towards the end there, that it really started to get very heavy-handed. Now, I'm not one of these kind of people who are like, oh, Roger Waters even has it in the beginning of, if I think of it, I'll put the snapshot I took of it, of the beginning of the show right here. But even has, like, if you're one of those, I love Pink Floyd but can't stand Roger Waters' politics people, fuck off to the bar or something, he said that. Said, I'm not necessarily one of those people. I think Roger Waters has a right to say what he wants to say. And obviously anybody who's listened to Pink Floyd's music, and particularly Roger's solo stuff and the latter stuff like The Wall and The Final Cut, that kind of stuff, and Animals even, knows that the man's very political, okay? We know that. I think most people now who are familiar with Roger Waters understand his positions on various issues and whatnot. I didn't necessarily have a problem with it. The problem I had was that the entire show revolved around it, and even to a certain extent I can accept that, but I'll be honest, it got depressing after a certain point, especially towards the latter part of the second set. I was just kind of like, ugh, okay. And the other issues I had with it was I really disliked his version of Comfortably Numb. I appreciate what he tried to do with that, and that's a song, unfortunately, in the context of a Roger Waters solo show, that just has David Gilmour written all over it. I mean, to not have David Gilmour playing those solos, I think is a huge, it's just a huge void in terms of seeing that song performed live. And so that was one thing. But even beyond that, I gotta be honest, I'm not really a big fan of Roger Waters' solo stuff, and he played a lot of it. Now, that being said, he played Sheep. I loved it. He played the latter part of Wish You Were Here. So he played like Have a Cigar, Wish You Were Here, and the second Shine on You Crazy Diamond. Huge highlights of the show. I loved the stuff he opened up with the second set. He did like In the Flesh, and he came out in the uniform and everything. And he played the whole latter part of Dark Side of the Moon, which I really enjoyed, and everything. And he closed it with Outside the Wall, which was really cool. Amazing performance, amazing show. I really, really liked it. It just, for me, the politics at a certain point got fatiguing, and I had a few nitpicky things. But overall, it was a fantastic show. I'm glad I finally got to see Roger Waters. David Gilmour, tour again, my man. You are on my bucket list. I regret not being able to see you when Richard Wright was still with us. What was that now? Probably 12 years ago or something, whenever you toured last with him. 2008. I wish I could have seen him with that final tour with Richard. That would have been amazing. And I would love to also see Nick Mason's Saucer Full of Secrets. Matt, if you ever see this, I apologize that I didn't get to see that show with you. I was pushing for Iron Maiden, which, spoiler alert, may appear on this list. So yeah, number 7, Roger Waters. Number 6 was I was very fortunate again to see with my buddy Matt and with my wife Rachel in 2016 on my birthday. Actually, I saw the mighty Black Sabbath, which keep an eye out. There might be a video related to them coming out soon. But yeah, Black Sabbath. I saw them on the End tour. Unfortunately, Bill Ward was not with them. They had Ozzy's drummer, which, pardon me, but his name is kind of escaping me at the moment. But he did a really, really good job. I got to be honest. I don't know if Bill Ward, where he's at in terms of his health and everything, could have done that show, to be quite honest with you. But overall, it was an amazing show. We still had Ozzy, Tony, and Geezer. I think Ozzy has such great crowd control, and just, he's a really, really engaging frontman, and was just really, really entertaining. Let me see those fucking hands! He just kept saying that, and they just ran through a bunch of classic Sabbath tunes. Some of my favorites were Children of the Grave, Into the Void. They opened with the song Black Sabbath, which was amazing. They played Snowblind off of Volume 4. That was really great. Just really, really awesome show. My only complaint was it was a bit short, but these guys are getting on in years, and otherwise, I mean, I can't really complain. Tony Iommi played some friggin' amazing solos. Geezer did this awesome bass solo. I don't know what effect pedal he had, but it was really, really great. Yeah, just really, really amazing heavy show, and it's Sabbath, man, the mighty Sabbath. I'm glad I was able to see them. Again, would have liked Bill Ward, but what can you do? Band politics and the members getting on in years. There's only so much you can do, really. So we're on to the top 5. So this was the really hard thing, was discerning, what bands to pick. And, for me, it's also like weighing performance versus, the whole experience of it, too. There's a bit of nostalgia with some of it. So this was a little hard to do. But for me, we'll go with my number 5. This was a band I saw in 2018. This was a bucket list band for a long time. I was so happy when they announced that they were touring again after a bit of a hiatus. It was King Crimson, who, of course, we've done a whole discography series on. I've talked about seeing them before. This was when they had their 3 or 4 drummers, this lineup, and I was so happy. They went back with Jocko as the singer, playing all these sort of, classic era King Crimson songs. I mean, one thing that was really awesome about this tour is that they kept rotating songs, so you kind of didn't know what you were going to get. And they played stuff all throughout, King Crimson's career, which, I mean, is very diverse in terms of the sound, but at the core, it's that Crimson sound. This was probably, technically speaking, and in terms of musically, the best band I've ever seen live. I mean, when they played Starless and they just thundered through, like, it was just an amazing, blistering performance of Starless, and the red light came down. I had chills, and my buddy Matt even said, "Wow, this is really overwhelming." And I was like, "Yeah, that's Crimson, dude. Crimson live is a whole different beast," and it was fantastic. They played Islands. I loved that version of Islands. They played I love one sort of song that I really like that I think's underrated in their catalog is "The Construction of Light," which I thought Jocko did a really good job on. I wish that Adrian Belew had been part of that lineup, because I think that would have made it absolutely perfect, because they played, I think it was Indiscipline, and I just didn't. That was one of the only songs I wasn't really like, nah, that's an Adrian song for sure. So I would have loved it if Adrian could have been part of that lineup. Kind of like had Adrian, sing his songs and then have Jocko do, the earlier stuff, pre-Discipline stuff would have been really cool. But overall, I mean, the whole band was amazing. Mel Collins, fantastic saxophonist, other woodwind instruments. Tony Levin was there, obviously. I mean, he's a monster. And then the amazing, enigmatic Robert Fripp, of course. I couldn't keep my eyes off of him. He's just a phenomenal guitar player, one of my very favorites, and just so good. Technically, the most amazing band I've ever seen live. Awesome experience. And I saw them at the Beacon Theater, which is a really good venue, I think, for a band like Crimson. They really showed off their chops. My number 4, this is in terms of experience, and I'm going to get a little flack for this one possibly, but I don't really care. My number 4 was Kiss. I saw Kiss with my brother-in-law, again, at Madison Square Garden. This was way back in 2009, so that's been 13 years now. Wow. Jesus. I saw them. It was, of course, with Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer in the band. But you know what? As much as I don't necessarily agree with them wearing Peter and Ace's makeup, I thought they did a phenomenal job. And the show itself, the reason I think this is so high is that show made me a Kiss fan. I was not really a very big Kiss fan, to be honest with you. I liked a few of their hits. I never disliked the band, but long story short, we stumbled across tickets. Somebody at my brother-in-law's job came in and offered him a pair of Kiss tickets for $50, and he said to me, he's like, "Do you want to go see Kiss at the Garden?" And this was like the day before. I was like, yes. So I literally called out of work on the train to Madison Square Garden from New Jersey to New York City. I was drinking a Coke bottle that had Jack Daniels in it. This is like such a classic way to see Kiss. I believe I gave a beer to a homeless guy, and we went in and we had nosebleeds kind of, but at the Garden, I feel at the Garden you can't really get a bad seat. So we were right above like the riser, so there was no one in front of us, and we were directly in line with the stage. And Kiss blew us away. The band Buck Cherry opened for them. They were pretty good too. The only thing I really remember from them is they played a really cool version of Highway Star by Deep Purple. So they were okay. They warmed up the crowd well enough. But Kiss was really the main show. I mean, the pyros, the blood, the rockets shooting out of the guitar. They ran through all of the classic Kiss tunes, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, I have to say, overall, they blew me away. Their live show is really something really something to be reckoned with. I would say they probably do it better than just about any other band. And some people might think that's hokey or gimmicky. I don't really care. It's what Kiss does. They are as big as they are for a reason, I think, and they have a lot of great songs. I mean, honestly, Strutter, Deuce. They played stuff like. What is it, 100,000 Years, eat like deeper cuts like that from earlier in their discography. I really, really enjoyed the whole experience. I thought it was a really great show. Okay, and we're getting into the top three. My number three was a bucket list band for quite a while. I unfortunately missed this band twice because long story short, my friend Matt went and saw them a couple times, and I just didn't get a chance to go. I was supposed to go with him the very first time, but I didn't. Anyway, the mighty Iron Maiden. I was very, very lucky to see this pre-COVID. It was, I think, late in the summer 2019, and I saw them at the Barclays Center in New York City, and they were as incredible as everybody says they are. I really enjoyed them. It was, of course, for the Legacy of the Beast tour. I guess it would be considered the first leg of it. I'm not really sure at this point, but they played a bunch of amazing songs. The Trooper, Run to the Hills, Hallowed Be Thy Name. They played Flight of the Icarus, a bunch of stuff, 2 Minutes to Midnight. I mean, all the classic Maiden tunes, even a few from, what's the one, Sign of the Cross, I think, from their, 90s era. That was really good. They played a couple of new songs, but yeah, incredible band, incredible energy, particularly for their age. I know they're all in their 60s at this point. The guitars playing was amazing. Steve Harris, his bass playing. I mean, the whole they're an institution, really. I love that band, and their live show was excellent. I loved all the different costumes and stuff that Bruce Dickinson was going in and out of, particularly when he was holding that lantern during Fear of the Dark, and he was in that kind of weird sort of 18th century garb. That was really cool. And what else? I don't know. Amazing energy. The opening act they had with them sucked, which is the first time I've heard that about them, unfortunately. But otherwise, they were just an amazing band. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a band with that much energy. And, again, at 60 years old, post throat cancer, Bruce Dickinson sounds amazing. The band is tight as can be. And, yeah, just an amazing, amazing show. I love Maiden. They're phenomenal and one of the very, very best shows I've ever seen. Number two, this one caught me by surprise as far as how much I thought I was going to enjoy it. So, long story short with this one, I received a phone call from my aunt. This would have been late May, and she said, "Hey, you need to help me fulfill a bucket list item." And I was like, "What's that?" She goes, "I got 2 tickets for Paul McCartney." So I was like, "Whoa, Paul McCartney!" I never thought I would ever get to see Paul McCartney. And truth be told, I am a huge Beatles fan, but not so much a Paul fan. I always thought he was maybe a little, I don't know, maybe it's just one of those things where, there's certain things about an artist that kind of circulates, which may or may not be true. He always came off as a little bit just what's the word for Paul? Maybe a little arrogant, I don't know. I always liked his songs, but I never really dove into his solo career very deep, except the Band on the Run album by Wings. It's a great album. But I mean, it's one of the Beatles. Why would I not go see one of the Beatles, So I was pretty excited about it because Paul wrote some of their very best songs, and at the same time my expectations weren't super high. I mean, the man was a week away from 80 when I saw him this year. It was about June. So it's the Got Back tour. And I saw him at the Dome in Syracuse, which was really a very interesting experience. Just trying to get to the venue was an experience, but I had a really good time. It was just my aunt and I. She's a huge fan, and she's a Beatles fan from way back. She's in her 70s, and it was a really, really fun experience in terms of a concert goes, that I was able to bond with her. We kind of have a nice story now. But also, to be honest with you, Paul blew me away. Like, completely blew me away. His band was amazing. The show was incredible, particularly moments like Blackbird, or, when he had all the pyrotechnics during Live and Let Die. And he played a few of his solo songs, which I really enjoyed. He played a bunch of Beatles stuff, obviously. Even his newer stuff was really good. I really enjoyed it. There were those moments like Let It Be and Hey Jude where, the lighters are going, or the phones, I guess. And all of that. And he played for a long time. I think it was probably a good 2.5 hours he played. And he was just incredible. He sounded amazing. His voice was great. His playing was great. His band was super tight. That drummer of his was very entertaining, just like dancing around. And the show itself was wonderful. He such a charismatic front man. I have so much respect for the man. Like, it's almost like a newfound respect for him. Even though I've always known he was talented, and I always have liked him, but there was always something like I don't know. I guess slightly. I was always slightly a little off put with him, but that's all gone away now. I think he's phenomenal. I have so much respect for him as a musician and as a songwriter, and I thought the show honestly blew me away. I was really shocked by how much I enjoyed it, and there's all those classic songs. I mean, the entire set list was basically filled with songs that I really enjoyed. So I thought it was great. Probably I should mention this. One of my very, very favorites was he did it in 2 parts, but he played that whole sort of medley of songs at the end of Abbey Road, which is my favorite Beatles album, and I really, really loved that. That was just amazing. And he also did a version of I've Got a Feeling, where it was footage from the Get Back film that Peter Jackson did, and it was him basically duetting with John Lennon, which was really, really cool to see. So I really enjoyed that, and overall, just an amazing show. Blew my mind. I'm really glad I got to see Sir Paul McCartney, and thank you to Auntie, who, if you ever see this, I don't know if you ever will, but if you do, thank you so much for taking me to that show. That was an amazing experience, and I'll never forget it. So, like, one of the very, very best shows I've ever seen. And my number 1 goes to, maybe it might be a cheat. It's the same band, but I saw them on 3 separate occasions. And it's the mighty, you will not be surprised by this one at all, Rush. So Rush was the second band I ever saw. The first show, or the first time I ever saw Rush, was in 2008, and it's a very personal experience for me. It's very hard for me to get past that experience, the nostalgia of it, the feeling I had of it, and also like the feeling of freedom. It was the first time I ever took any kind of trip on my own. I was about 19 at the time. Andy, who is of course my co-host in Sound of Music, he was like 16 at the time. And my friend Matt was also 16, who I've gone to a bunch of shows with. And my brother-in-law Dan, who's been on actually I've talked about him a couple times. He has been on this channel on our guitar list. But we all went with my sister, and we drove out from New Jersey to Hershey, Pennsylvania, which is where they played at the stadium, the like venue there, stadium, whatever it is. And it was the latter part, second leg of the Snakes and Arrows tour, and that band just blew me away. They caught me at a time when I was at a peak of being into them and into music, and it was like I associated with them with this like newfound freedom of adulthood, and like all these memories of being with my friends and my family, my sister and my brother-in-law, obviously. And there was such an amazing show. It was a really great set list. Neil Peart did that amazing drum solo he did for like 10 minutes. Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, and I talked about Rush a bunch. You know how much I mean, if anybody who's watched this channel very much knows I am a huge Rush fan. And then I was lucky to see them in 2010 again with the same crowd. Poor Matt was sicker than a dog, but that was for the Time Machine tour, where they played all of Moving Pictures back to front, which was amazing. And that was probably my favorite set list of any show that they played. And then the last time I saw them, unfortunately I did not catch them on R40, which I really wish I had, but tickets were hard to get, I remember, and I didn't have a lot of money at the time. But I did catch them on the Clockwork Angels tour in 2012. And what was special about that show is I took my younger brother, Walt. That was his very first concert. So we went and saw them. It was in, I think it's called the Prudential Center in Newark. Newark, New Jersey. Anyway, we saw them there, and they, again, that might have been the best show that they played in terms of just technically and the lights and everything. We had nosebleeds, but it was an amazing show. They had that little sort of mini orchestra with them to play some of the Clockwork Angels tunes, and the Clockwork Angels album was an album of theirs that I really, really enjoyed, and I thought was an amazing way for them to end their career. We didn't know it at the time that would be the last Rush album, but it was, regardless, it was a great way to end it. And all 3 times I saw Rush, they just got better and better. But that very first time that I saw Rush, in 2008 at Hershey Park in Pennsylvania, has the fondest memories, I think, of ever going to a concert. It may not have been, even thinking back on it, been the greatest show that I ever saw, but it's just the experience of the whole thing was just really amazing, and I'll always cherish that. It was really wonderful. So Rush, I'm an enormous Rush fan, and they're without a doubt the greatest band I've seen live. And aside from the aforementioned King Crimson, probably the best band I've seen technically live. Just they're amazing musicians, and they got better. Like, I guess the more you do something, especially after 35, 40 years of playing together, of course you're going to keep getting better and better. But they really did get better every time I saw them. And from what I've seen of the footage of the R40 tour, they went out on top. And there's no band that went out better than Rush, in my opinion. And amazing, greatest band I've ever seen. So with that, thank you all for watching this. I really appreciate that. What are your top 10 favorite concerts that you've gone to? I'm really curious in the comments as to what bands people have seen and artists people have seen live, especially some of you older dudes and dudettes. No offense with the age thing, but I love hearing about people. I've gotten comments in my prog video. It's like, oh, I saw Genesis in '73, and I love those kind of comments. So what bands, what tours have you seen? I feel like for me, I haven't been fortunate enough to have been born at the right time. Not that I'm complaining. I love being in the era I'm in now, but the one thing I would love to have seen would have been some of those classic bands that a lot of which I have mentioned in their prime. Tull in their prime, Pink Floyd in their prime, doing like The Wall and stuff. Led Zeppelin. Like, I would have loved to have seen these bands in their prime. So I'm really curious about you older folks, what bands you've seen, and then you younger folks, what newer bands have you seen? Who should I go check out? Who's touring right now that I should go see whenever I have money again? So just let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, thank you all for watching, and have a great day. Peace.